Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to yet another Cutter Top 10 sports video. Today, we're going to be looking at the top 10 emotional moments in college football history, as evidenced by wearing the Arkansas shirt. We're going to be looking at some emotional college football moments of all time. Not everything has to do with death, it has to do with a lot of things, too, a lot of factors. Our first one is number 10, the 2006 Rose Bowl, a massive emotional thing because Texas USC in the 1 versus 2 matchup, that's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, bowl game of all time. Texas and USC were 1-2, and obviously they would meet in the Rose Bowl. USC would practically be given a Rose Bowl berth anyhow because they were a Pac 10 team, whereas the Big Ten champ did not make it, even though the Michigan tried and Ohio State tried. But anyway, Texas would face SC. It was thrilling. It was a national emotion, tears, joy, and disbelief, especially after the fact USC had that 30-plus game winning streak and lost it to Texas. Vince Young knew what he was doing. I personally picked Texas to beat USC because I was like, somehow, in some way, Texas is going to pull it off. It was 4th and 5 and the national championship on the line, and Vince Young ran into the corridor. He's got it, as one of Keith Jackson's last moments for college football commentating happened. But yeah, it was an emotional time. Poor SC, they botched it. Number 9 is the death of Tyler Hilinski for Washington State 2018. Washington State was a pretty good quarterback factory. Well, they had some guy in the 60s. Well, they had Jason Gesser, future CFL icon. They had Ryan Leaf. Let's not talk about that. And they've had a few other quarterbacks too, like Cam Ward for a few years before he went to Miami and became the number 1 draft pick by the Titans. Anyhow, Tyler Hilinski was a pretty good quarterback. Unfortunately, though, he had trouble, and it brought mental health to the forefront because even though he was a good quarterback for Washington State, he had some demons, and his memory was honored and all that. Number 8 is Auburn against Alabama in 2013. This was a miraculous game and all that. What they call the kick six. What happened was Alabama went for a 50-yard field goal to win the game. Even if they missed it, it would go to overtime. And they missed it wide right. Chris Davis, with a K, number 11 in the programs, would run the ball down the field on the left sideline without going out of bounds, and he scored. And Auburn shocked number 1 Alabama. The Auburn radio announcer, I can't remember his name, but he died a few years ago. He had those big calls and all that. And Auburn shocked Alabama, proving that they were a decent power. Sorry about the car horn. Number 7 is Tulane football after Hurricane Katrina. Of course, everyone knows about the whole thing with New Orleans with football, with the Saints coming back from Hurricane Katrina. But Tulane's future was in doubt, just like the New Orleans Saints. People thought that after Hurricane Katrina, the Saints would not be able to come back to New Orleans and the team would be permanently settled to maybe San Antonio. But they came back to New Orleans. Anyhow, the football team that shared the Superdome with them, Tulane, before they built a football stadium for like 2013. Well, the Superdome was still around. But anyway, Tulane's future was in doubt and all that. And the fact of the matter was that they had the resilience and all that. Tulane would take years to build everything. But anyway, that's just how it goes. Number 6 is the resurrection of the University of Alabama Birmingham's program for football. UAB football was at a crossroads at times. And what ended up happening was that the football team actually took a hiatus. In 2014, UAB needed to make some cuts, and they decided to cut the team and all that. They went for hiatus for 2 years and all that, which was one of the worst feelings ever because the athletic director, UAB, said that UAB had to close down the football program to save money. And lots of people rubbish. The University of Alabama Board of Trustees even was mad and all that. It would cost the school $49 million over the next 5 years and all that. However, and many seniors on UAB graduation day wore UAB football jerseys. However, on June 1st, 2015, Ray Watts, the UAB president, did say because of public opinion and fundraising of over $27 million, the UAB program would actually be reinstated. And by 2017, they actually took things and all that. Fortunately, though, UAB, well, they came back from hiatus in 2017. Fortunately, though, the Conference USA said that they wouldn't take any action against UAB because of the Marines training football, saying that they're welcome to come back and all that. UAB would have a pavilion practice center. And November the 4th, they beat Rice 52-21 to be bowl eligible. Ironically, their first year after their hiatus and all that. So, yeah, their first bowl win was December 2018. So, anyway, that's what happened. You don't really see, you could see the emotion for SMU coming back from the death penalty, but they were crappy and all that for years upon years. Number 5 is the tragic death of Sal Enuizi for the University of Colorado. So, the problem with the Sal Enuizi thing was that he was a pretty good quarterback for Colorado and all that. He chose Colorado and missed his first year of eligibility in 1986 because his scores failed him. He would have to miss the freshman year. However, he was back, and by 1987, he was the starting quarterback for Colorado, getting them to 7 wins by no bowl game. Of course, this was in the era of like 10 to 12 bowl games instead of like 32. Anyways, he helped Colorado go 8-3 in the 1988 season and lost to Brigham Young in the Freedom Bowl. However, during his participation in the Freedom Bowl, everyone noticed he was not his usual self. He looked sluggish. And all that. He would have massive symptoms, including coughing consistently, loss of appetite, and vomiting blood, which made him miss a lot of things. And then in March 1989, he was diagnosed with a rare form of inoperable stomach cancer and was given 6 months to live. He would visit Colorado games and practices, but would die at hospital September 23rd. Over 2,000 mourners packed the Mackey Auditorium at the University of Colorado, and hundreds more outside. He was buried in Oceanside, California. The team dedicated their season to NUEC, customizing the team's jersey with the name Sal into their sleeves. They actually went 11-0 in the regular season, but fell to Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. They did win the next season in the rematch against Notre Dame for the national championship. But unfortunately, that was kind of controversial because of their loss, their win over Missouri being tainted because of the whole 5th down game. And, of course, the phantom clipping penalty on Notre Dame that ruined Rocket Ishmael's touchdown. And he actually ended up having a child with Bill McCartney's daughter, Christy. And their son actually is a New England Patriots assistant coach, T.C. McCartney. So that actually ended up big story, but it doesn't matter. Number 4 is Pat Tillman and his sacrifice. I know that he was not in college football at the time, but Pat Tillman was legendary number 42 for Arizona State and helped that team beat Nebraska, the 2-time defending national champs, at a shocker on Frank Kush Day, 19-0. Pat Tillman was great for Arizona State, and he found work with the Arizona NFL team, the Cardinals. And somehow, in some way, after a few years, he actually walked away from an NFL contract extension to join the U.S. Army during the war in Afghanistan. He would die in Afghanistan, with his courage and sacrifice resonating deeply with the football community and beyond. With his number 40, it's 42 retired at Arizona State and number 40 retired by the Cardinals organization. But of course, we all know Pat Tillman died of friendly fire. It's like pathetic. But anyway, that's just how it goes. and all that. Number three is a tragic death for the University of Syracuse as Ernie Davis would pass away. He was an icon for Syracuse. There's a movie after him called The Express, based on his life. Ernie Davis was a star for Syracuse after Jim Brown was a star for Syracuse and then went to the Cleveland Browns. Ernie Davis shocked everyone by becoming the first African American to win the Heisman. And Syracuse couldn't be more proud of him and all that. Unfortunately, though, before he played for Washington in the NFL, he would lose his battle with leukemia. And, it was just sad. It would have been like, what would Ernie Davis have done in the NFL if he was healthy? But unfortunately, he died. His inspirational journey and untimely death left the football world in mourning and all that. And yeah, The Express was a pretty good movie about him. Number two is one of the worst moments in college football history when it comes to tragedy, and that was the bonfire collapse of Texas in Texas A&M in 1999. In 1999, well, the Aggie bonfire happened, in which many pieces of wood would happen, and then they would build it before A&M's traditional match with the University of Texas. Unfortunately, though, there was a massive collapse. 5,000 lots were there, and it collapsed. 12 people died, 27 were injured. It was just horrible. Many news trucks were broadcast from the A&M campus and all that. So, yeah, even the Texas A&M football team tried to assist with recovering bodies and all that. So it was 12 people and all that. One man, John Comstock, actually was still alive, even though he was part of the collapse. He had amputation of his left leg and partial paralysis of his right side, but he would finish his degree in 2001. So anyway, yeah, they actually had to cut the bonfire short for a couple of years, but then by 2002, it said that it was officially canceled and all that. So anyway, it was just sad and all that. Texas actually had a corresponding rivalry pregame tradition called the Hex Rally, but they decided to change that in 1999 in favor of a unity gathering November 22nd at the Texas Tower and extended an invitation to all Aggies and their friends. And the tower was darkened out and all that. So anyway, there would be picnic. Instead of the bonfire burning on November 25th, the Aggies held a vigil and remembrance ceremony. Over 40,000 people lit candles and all that before walking to Kyle Field for yell practice. So anyway, George H.W. Bush, alongside Barbara and his son, the future President George W. Bush, with Laura, were there too. The Aggies would take on Texas in the rivalry game, and basically it was in the face of tragedy. The Aggies knew they had to win, and they did. They beat Texas 20-16, and all that. It was just amazing and all that. So, yeah, there was a lot of controversies and all that. So, anyway, there was a lot of problems and all that, but still, it's a legendary moment. And number one was Rudy Rudiger's triumphant sack. You know the story. Rudy was this guy, underdog, who wanted to go to Notre Dame despite his grades being terrible and being very undersized. Played by Sean Astin in the 1993 movie, it was legendary and all that. He persisted, he overcame adversity, he was on the practice team, he was even allowed to suit up to be on the bench, but he never took the field. Eric Parshigian didn't wanted him to have at least a few plays, but he did. But once Dan Devine came in for Notre Dame, he wasn't so sure. But the Notre Dame people Allegedly, the Notre Dame team basically said that they wouldn't play unless Rudy gets into the game for one down. So the coach allowed him, and he played against Georgia Tech. It was amazing and all that. He made a massive sack of the Georgia Tech quarterback in the in the movie. And yes, it did mirror life because Rudy did have a sack in 1975 against Georgia Tech, which was amazing. And even more amazing is in a few scenes you get to see the real Rudy Rudiger in the background of Rudy. It was amazing, and he was actually carried off the field by his teammates, which was unusual. But it happened. It really happened. It was one of the most emotional moments ever. And Rudy is a pretty good movie, despite a lot of people probably saying that, oh, it's just freaking fiction. And basically, why are we celebrating that? Well, celebrate it, jerks. That's all I gotta say. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.